Hello there, my name is Pankaj Mishra. You're watching News 9 Live. Let me take you to the southernmost tip of the African continent, South Africa, where history is created. Why so? BRICS has been expanded. Iran, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Egypt and Ethiopia have been invited to join BRICS. Now BRICS, as we all know, formed in 2009, expanded in 2010, and 13 years later, the very nature, the very formation of BRICS has changed. The nations are set to join, the new nations, the coalition from 2024, which is next year. The announcement was made during BRICS summit in Johannesburg. Prime Minister Modi expressed his support for the BRICS bloc expansion, and he emphasized the need for a multipolar world order where multiple centers of influence collaborate for global progress. Let's listen in what he had to say.
हमने ब्रिक्स की 15वीं वर्षगांठ पर इसका विस्तार करने का महत्वपूर्ण फैसला लिया है। जैसा मैंने कल कहा था, भारत ने ब्रिक्स की सदस्यता में विस्तार का हमेशा से पूरी तरह समर्थन किया है। भारत का ये मत रहा है कि नए सदस्यों के जुड़ने से ब्रिक्स एक संगठन के रूप में मजबूत तथा हमारे सभी साझा प्रयासों को एक नया बल देने वाला होगा। इस कदम से विश्व के अनेक देशों का मल्टीपोलर वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर में विश्वास और सुदृढ़ होगा। मुझे खुशी है कि हमारी टीम्स ने मिलकर एक्सपांशन के गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल्स, स्टैंडर्ड्स, क्राइटेरिया और प्रोसीड्यूर पर सहमति बनाई है और इनके आधार पर आज हम अर्जेंटीना, इजिप्ट, ईरान, सऊदी अरब, इथियोपिया और यूएई का ब्रिक्स में स्वागत करने के लिए सहमत हुए हैं। मेरे मित्र रामाफोसा जी ने भारत के मून मिशन को लेकर के ढेरों बधाइयां दी और मैं यहां कल से अनुभव कर रहा हूं, हर किसी से बधाइयां मिल रही हैं और दुनिया भर में भी इस सफलता को एक देश की सीमित सफलता के रूप में नहीं, लेकिन पूरी मानव जाति की एक महत्वपूर्ण सफलता के रूप में स्वीकार किया जा रहा है। ये हम सभी लोगों के लिए अत्यंत गर्व का विषय है और भारत के वैज्ञानिकों को पूरे विश्व की तरफ से अभिनंदन का अवसर है।
Leaders of the 5 countries unanimously agreed to invite Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Iran, and Ethiopia to the BRICS family as official members. China congratulates these countries and highly appreciate the efforts made by our chair, South Africa, and President Ramaphosa.
So there we heard both the leaders obviously underlining the very essence of expansion of BRICS, and to discuss the matters further, what does it mean, the fine print and beyond the headline scenario, we are joined by two eminent voices on the broadcast. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking time out. Ambassador J.K. Tripathi, former Indian diplomat, and Prasoon Sharma, Asia Global Fellow, Hong Kong. Always a pleasure to speak to you both. Thank you so much. Ambassador Tripathi, let me begin with you first. Prime Minister Modi saying that, with changing times, we should also change, and other global bodies also should take note of these changing scenarios. A hint towards China, maybe, for its blockade in United Nations Security Council and the membership there as well.
Yes, certainly. Not only that, the hint was also of expansion of G20 because India has proposed the inclusion of African Union as a bloc in G20 as a permanent member. And of course, the hint was towards the expansion of the BRICS, which Modi has said that BRICS, we have decided to expand, and we have agreed on the basic principles, guidelines, procedures, and criteria. So I understand, because I understand that with this, it has been decided to include these 6 nations. But I think these 6 nations will first have to go through the observer status, and then they will be included from 1st January 2024 as South African Foreign Minister has clarified. So this is going to be a little. The process is going to take a little longer before they are formally members of this. And as regards the Chinese insistence, and that China wanted to hijack the BRICS by inviting its cronies and dependents. So I don't think that will work very much, because still BRICS, as per regulations of BRICS, any decision has to be unanimous. That means if a single country, say for example India and Brazil are on the same platform, even if a single country objects, then it will be not carried.
Right.
So I mean, it seems that we have good relations with all the 6 countries that have been inducted, that has been decided to be inducted in the group.
Right.
So far it's okay. But another big question that is going to haunt India will again, and more than India, to haunt Xi Jinping, is the issue of currency, common currency, because China has been advocating a common currency all through. And we are very cautious about that, because we are not apparently in favor of de-dollarization, because our biggest trade partner now is not China but is USA,
United States,
with $126 billion trade. And so we are comfortable with dealing in dollars, and then maybe BRICS can decide, as South African delegate has proposed, that instead of having a common currency, let us recognize currency of BRICS countries in each other's territory.
Right.
That perhaps would be acceptable to all the members, and I don't think China will be able to oppose to that.
Right. Absolutely, Ambassador Tripathi. When we talk about that synergy, there are so many areas that are still not tapped, and obviously not much of trade either. Prasoon, now you follow China not just vis-a-vis India, but vis-a-vis the world also. 2 critical aspects that have come out. The first one is China's tentative dominance and an attempt at the expansion to have its own say. That's one aspect that was evident. And secondly, could you also please help us understand how there was an attempt, or India which evaded, though, in order to not go against the West, the anti-West sentiments also weighing heavy, especially with China being there. How do you see that?
I think India has developed strategic options for itself in foreign policy and trade, not only in multilateral forums, also bilateral forums. So I think expansion will give more opportunities for Indian leadership to prudently play. Like Iran, the trade we are doing with Chabar Post, can we make it more multilateral with the BRICS and other nations? And the facts about BRICS nation is that this year the BRICS nations did a trade which is like 31 4 or 6% of the global trade, and G7 contributed just 30%. So that shows the growth and the influence of BRICS nations, which is increasing exponentially. And with this new expansion, it is predicted that BRICS in coming years, BRICS may contribute around 50% of global GDP. So all these factors is in synergy with our domestic trade, that is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Can we, align our manufacturing and services to these BRICS nations, and also it is helpful for our startup and other ecosystem. So I think most importantly, we are very prudent and successful enough to carve our place in all these important multilateral forums, whether it's BRICS, now will host G20, and most probably Prime Minister will also attend ASEAN Summit in coming days. So it is by this, it shows that how relevant India is in each the multilateral platform, and this gives leverage to India for its foreign policy, for its economic policy, and also to build capacity. So I think it is some way we have carved out a niche for us, and we need to wait and watch how others reciprocate on this expansion, and including China.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Tripathi, if I may ask here, how true would it be to say that the expansion, the one that has just happened, could be a shot in the arm for China and Russia to form a, say, symbolic coalition against the West, thereby, helping their own geopolitical strategies? Is that so?
Well, as you have rightly pointed out, it will be a shot in arm, but only symbolically. Because, as I said, that any decision taken in BRICS will have to be on the basis of consensus. So, as long as even one member country objects to any proposal, the proposal will be defeated. So, yes, they can take joy in this, that their cronies or their dependents, like Iran and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where China had played a very important role in bringing them together again, and then Argentina, which is quite close to China. So China can take that. China and Russia is now playing the second fiddle. So China and Russia can take satisfaction in this, that they had now been successful in getting their people in, their countries in. But that is not very important for the time being, because these countries have had good relations with India as well, India and Brazil as well. So it is only symbolic. Now the main important thing will be that next summit, if some other members, some other countries which are quite close to China and not that close to India or Brazil are trying to be inducted. That will be the litmus test.
Definitely. Prasoon, also building on what Ambassador Tripathi says, if you look at the countries Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and UAE, the new names, the new faces, the six of them included, two African countries, Egypt and Ethiopia, obviously northeastern African countries. China of late, we have seen how its checkbook diplomacy has been paying it off as far as the Western Africa is concerned. Now, with the inclusion of these two African countries, how do you see, is it beneficial for Africa, or is it somehow circling back to China itself?
I think we need to wait and watch how this fold on, as Ambassador says, and what sort of contribution is done by these countries, as well as the main reason these countries, especially Argentina, is joining is because of BRICS Bank, the New Development Bank, which
Yes.
has disbursed around 90 projects loan. So I think especially these countries are looking for resources, and we have to wait and watch how these banks will evaluate, because their applications and projects which they support. So I think for that also, I think all these countries will need support from India, because we also have a decision-making stake in that New Development Bank, and India is the largest beneficiary for projects supported by this bank. So I think it's still early to decide, and as Ambassador said, we have to see how what value these countries will bring into this particular group, and as well as to the bilateral relationship with all the BRICS nations, especially India and China.
Absolutely. Ambassador Tripathi, only a few days ago, I saw the National Security Advisor to the United States President, Jake Sullivan, saying that BRICS is not a threat to United States. And he built upon it also, saying these are the reasons why US doesn't see BRICS as a challenge. Now, as Prashun rightly mentions, when it comes to the money, new development bank, the lenders like IMF, the World Bank, obviously, who are under the influence of United States, do you think this could be one cause of concern for the West, especially United States, when it comes to developing nations seeking money from somewhere else?
Yes, certainly, because the stringent condition that IMF or World Bank put, or the Paris Club puts, before the before the borrowing countries, these conditions are not beneficial or not favorable. Whereas New Development Bank has some better conditions. One. The second thing is that now many countries, especially if you think of BRICS, China, Russia, India, and Brazil, and even South Africa, they have reduced their US holdings considerably during the last 3 years. China has reduced it by more than $1 billion. India by 74 million, I suppose, and Brazil by 25 million, and Russia by 20 million or something, and or I think it's $1 billion, and South Africa by $10.4 billion. So with this, de-dollarization is taking place, and as you know that the 4 countries in the BRICS, that is China, Russia, India, and Brazil, have already developed an alternative to SWIFT, alternative system, financial messaging system to SWIFT, and they have their own indigenous systems, which are taking, gaining traction, but it will be some time. It will be some more time before these alternatives gain ground. So certainly it is a cause of concern for the West. But here I must point out that I was surprised that three more countries which were, I think, in a better position than the countries which have been included. These 3 countries should have, the BRICS should have thought seriously about that. And these all other 2 countries, 2 out of this, that is Indonesia and Mexico, they are $1 billion plus economy, and they are democracy. They are the fast emerging economies. Nigeria has come up to Nigeria has overcome, rather Nigeria has exceeded the GDP of South Africa. So that means South Africa no longer represents Africa as it was thought in 2010 when South Africa was inducted. So these three countries should have been considered
Right.
very seriously, but I don't know why it was done.
Right.
Yes.
Ambassador Tripathi, stay with us. Prasoon, a very significant point here raised by Ambassador Tripathi, with the exclusion of Indonesia uh, in our neighborhood, proximity to both India and China, but as the science would have it, more tilted towards Indian interests. Obviously, common cultural interests are also there, which are something to go by. When it comes to the choices, how do you see the expansion as of now? Because I remember just before, hours before this expansion happened, Prime Minister Modi and Indian side had put certain conditions that first criteria could be that there should be no sanctions, international sanctions on the chosen countries. Secondly, a particular GDP marker should also be there. How do you see the choice of the countries when we talk about and taking it forward what Ambassador Tripathi said?
I think majority of the countries which have got selected, they are engaged with these three big countries, that is RIC. If you see Saudi Arabia, they are already dialogue partner in SCO. Again,
Right,
it's
right.
it's just an economic grouping, but SCO has a larger, horizon, including, security and terrorism. So, and Saudi Arabia had positive relations with both India and China. India already had a comprehensive strategic upgrade with them. And India also attended I2U2 summit with them. So, the broadly, if you see, there is a energy-rich nations which got selected, that is Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Iran, which is the second largest gas supplier. And both India and China has a strategic projects going on there. UAE again, because there is a comprehensive strategic partnership between India and UAE, and also China is doing many projects there. So I think majority of the selected countries have natural resources, especially energy based, and they are doing trade in local currency other than dollars with one or two countries within the founding BRICS members. So I think that made them sail through this criteria. And as you mentioned about Indonesia, I think as Ambassador mentioned, we have to wait and watch what in the next summit or sessions, how many of them will apply and got selected. Can recommendation from India can also get a few countries got enrolled. That will also make India think about the seriousness and multilateralism of BRICS in terms of decision making, in terms of strategic value, which India can gain from. So it's a new beginning, and we need to gauge things as and when it happens. As of now, it's positive for the group, but still, if there is no action, it will remain notional.
Right. Ambassador Tripathi, one question before we take those further sound bites coming in from South Africa once again. Talking about the synergy within the BRICS members as of now, the existing ones, there is not much trade that happens between them. There was talks earlier that a visa-free travel for better connectivity among these countries would be there. As Prasoon mentions, RIC, Russia, India, China, is one dominant bloc there. In your opinion, what is it that these countries can do amongst themselves as of now, just to begin with, let alone the expanded form, and to go beyond just geographic entities coming together at one place?
You see, they should, in my view, they should focus on at least the common minimum requirements or common minimum agreements, which are like putting brick cable like the bank and financing, instead of demanding and discussing about the currency. They should have some energy resilience, and they should also think of common supply chain, critical supply chain. They should also focus on the what you call global recovery system. These are the things which are apolitical, which are not for or against any of the blocs, West or East, Communist bloc or the Western NATO. So if all the countries decide to work in this direction with these parameters or these guidelines, probably they will have more synergy and leave the political tensions aside for bilateral discussions. So that is
Right.
what I think should be.
Could be done, definitely. Gentlemen, please stay with us. Before we take the final comments, let's listen into the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and also Xi Jinping, what they had to say at the BRICS summit.
हमने ब्रिक्स की 15वीं वर्षगांठ पर इसका विस्तार करने का महत्वपूर्ण फैसला लिया है। जैसा मैंने कल कहा था, भारत ने ब्रिक्स की सदस्यता में विस्तार का हमेशा से पूरी तरह समर्थन किया है। भारत का ये मत रहा है कि नए सदस्यों के जुड़ने से ब्रिक्स एक संगठन के रूप में मजबूत तथा हमारे सभी साझा प्रयासों को एक नया बल देने वाला होगा। इस कदम से विश्व के अनेक देशों का मल्टीपोलर वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर में विश्वास और सुदृढ़ होगा। मुझे खुशी है कि हमारी टीम्स ने मिलकर एक्सपांशन के गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल्स, स्टैंडर्ड्स, क्राइटेरिया और प्रोसीड्यूर पर सहमति बनाई है और इनके आधार पर आज हम अर्जेंटीना, इजिप्ट, ईरान, सऊदी अरब, इथियोपिया और यूएई का ब्रिक्स में स्वागत करने के लिए सहमत हुए हैं। मेरे मित्र रामाफोसा जी ने भारत के मून मिशन को लेकर के ढेरों बधाइयां दी और मैं यहां कल से अनुभव कर रहा हूं, हर किसी से बधाइयां मिल रही हैं और दुनिया भर में भी इस सफलता को एक देश की सीमित सफलता के रूप में नहीं, लेकिन पूरी मानव जाति की एक महत्वपूर्ण सफलता के रूप में स्वीकार किया जा रहा है। ये हम सभी लोगों के लिए अत्यंत गर्व का विषय है और भारत के वैज्ञानिकों को पूरे विश्व की तरफ से अभिनंदन का अवसर है।
Leaders of the 5 countries unanimously agreed to invite Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Iran, and Ethiopia to the BRICS family as official members. China congratulates these countries and highly appreciate the efforts made by our chair, South Africa, and President Ramaphosa.
So there we heard the heads of state once again. Prasoon, now obviously the challenges that lie ahead for BRICS, for the global world order also, climate change, trade disputes, security issues, these are some of the things that need to be addressed at one point of time or the other. How effectively do you think BRICS at today's given point of time is capable of doing that?
I think more than 40% of global population is with BRICS country, and with expansion, it will increase almost to 50%. So it is in terms of population, it's almost half of the humanity. So definitely they can do a lot, but all of them as a developing nation need a lot of resources as well as expertise. So India again can help them and also can learn a few best practices from others. Because if you see the bilateral relations with each BRICS country, India done around 100 billion worth trade with intra-BRIC countries. And the new countries which joined, they also have a growing relationship with India. So whether it's sustainability or like India can also gauge for new that solar alliance, and can like BRICS itself can make it as a official alliance within the BRICS. So that is a new idea which I think can be gauged around. But having 50% of population of globe and enough capacity to expand this climate change initiative, all these nations do need resources, and again the important role will come from the new development bank. What kind of resources they allocate, because their current focus is more towards infrastructure development and including digital and physical. What portion of these funds will be diverted to sustainability and climate change? They need to decide as a group. So a lot of potential there, but again we have to see what is on the ground and how each of them want to play their role in this new expanded group.
Right. Also, taking a look at the economic scenario here, Ambassador Tripathi, 2009 BRICS was constituted. 2010, the first and the only expansion happened, that was South Africa was added to the grouping. Now, at that time, obviously, the impact of the 2008 recession, the housing recessions that happened in US was still palpable, and there were other factors also by 2010. So one addition was done there. Now, 2023, we are in a post-pandemic world. There is a war going on between Russia and Ukraine, which is having a cascading impact on several world economies there. Do you believe that it is once again the economic aspect of the geopolitics which is driving this expansion, or which necessitated this expansion?
Well, it is not only economic aspect. Economic aspect is there, but then besides this, it is the wish or the insistence of the other members. Like you see, China wanted these members, especially Iran and Saudi Arabia. Brazil was not in very favor of that. India had a middle path. India said that, look, we have to first formulate the guidelines, etc., etc. Only then we'll be able to. Only then we'll have to expand. Because my last word of caution is that this was earlier BRICS was successful comparatively because of two things. One, it's a small size. Two, because most of them were the fast emerging economies. But now, because we have seen that big sized organizations tend to fail or tend to be less effective. Take the case of UN, take the case of OAS, take the case of African Union, take the case of Commonwealth. They have not been that much effective because their most of the time is spent on discussion, not on the decision. So most of the time they are unable to take a decision. Yes, like in a smaller country, in smaller organizations also, SARC has failed almost. But that was because within SARC, in the economy of India was far bigger than the other 5 and they had been complaining of big brotherly attitude and all that. But here, big advantage is that most of that at present, five of the members, all the five members, are developing rapidly, a developing
Right.
economy. However, if you resort to indiscreet inclusion or expansion, then that might create a problem. So my word of caution is that the BRIC at present should be very, very careful.
Right, very, very carefully. Thank you, Ambassador Tripathi, for actually, hitting the nail on its head and also mentioning the elephant in the room, which is the discreet way of approaching the membership here. Prasoon, one final question before we wrap up is what Ambassador Tripathi mentions is very critical as far as the pulling up of the interest is concerned, making your own quarters is concerned. Talking about SAARC, talking about ASEAN, talking about SCO, there are these bodies which have definitely, a pan-Asian presence. Now, a critical member is Pakistan, and we have China also in the neighborhood. The proposed inclusion of Pakistan or not, it hasn't made the cut so far, but
Hello.
do you believe it is going to be healthy and helpful if Pakistan also joins the bloc, or is it somewhere again pushing the lever towards the Chinese interests when it comes to specific case of Pakistan?
I think if the spirit of multilateralism will be diluted, then the group will become defunct. And I think too many groupings is also, as Ambassador mentioned, will dilute the outcomes. As the discussion about merging SCO with BRICS is already, there are initial discussion happening, because SCO also talks about the complex issues of security and terrorism, but BRICS is only focusing on economy. But as per the current geopolitical scenario, if you are not aligned geopolitically and bilaterally, there is no synergies in as per the security and the other geopolitical aspect, it will be difficult for you to contribute economically. So I agree that if they indulge in expanding without a minimum criteria, then the effectiveness of this group will be just notional, which I think it will also impact negatively to the success or the track record which BRICS has built, because of small grouping and because of eagerness to grow. All the developing nations were doing good, and also the relevance of the new development bank, because it is funding good projects based on the criteria, and the projects are doing very well. So if you are including countries which doesn't have a good track record, and then there will be defaults, and then the track record will be negatively impacted. This will also hamper the interest of new countries who wants to join, because they are looking to BRICS because of the track record, what they have achieved in the past. So if the track record is not good, I think it will also dilute the interest of new member countries.
Right. Prasoon Sharma and Ambassador J.K. Tripathi, thank you so much for taking out the time out this afternoon. Really appreciate your inputs and time, and always a pleasure to speak to both of you. So needless to say, the expansion part of BRICS expanded, might be coming as very good news, certainly for countries that have long wanted to be a part of this grouping. But obviously, the word of caution, as both Ambassador Tripathi and Prasoon Sharma, China expert, mentions, that for Indian interests, obviously India's interest, multilateral world order is something that needs to be kept on top priority. Thanks for watching this broadcast. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned.
I don't know if people get divided that easily.
The old system must change
And this is kind of disruption.
Just on controversy, a film cannot sustain so long.
Whenever they